Hi, and welcome to Inside Iowa Politics. I am Gray Television's Iowa Political Director, Dave Price. We'll start this week with a report that has not received a lot of attention so far. It comes from the State Department of Public Health, and it looks at the immunization rates for students across our state. A couple of numbers to pull out from here. The number of families receiving religious exemptions so their children do not have to be immunized has been on the rise 62% since 2018. And statewide, if you look at the number of students not fully immunized, you go back to 2020, obviously the year that COVID-19 entered our lives, the number is up 68%. If we isolate the southeast corner of our state in Van Buren County, it has the lowest immunization rates. About 2 in 10 students are not fully immunized there. Now, that part of our state also has a greater concentration of Amish and Mennonite families where they do not get vaccinated. But also, you look at what has changed since COVID-19 there. You have some people who have lost faith in immunizations because they have conspiracy theories or just other concerns about getting vaccinated against COVID-19. But then you also have another factor because of COVID-19, according to a county public health official we talked to.
There has been a lot of that, no matter if we're talking vaccines or follow up with specialists or just coming in to get your medications refilled. We've seen a lot of it. And even still, we're 3 years out and we're still seeing some of the, oh, did you follow up with, let's say, cardiology? Obviously, these are typically for the older ones. And they haven't, oh no, it got canceled during COVID. And then where it stopped. So we're seeing that a lot in our wellness or wellness for kiddos and adults. And then as I guess I assume, wellness is for children is when we do a lot of our vaccinations. And so if they're not coming in for those wellnesses, we're missing those vaccinations. And then, it's just a snowball effect.
So this small segment of the population that is convinced from something they've heard or something they've seen on the internet that the whole method of vaccinating people, the whole purpose of vaccinating people against COVID was some kind of conspiracy theory to hurt people or whatever the nefarious idea was with any of that. So as you're having conversations, and like in a room where you are right now, these can be some pretty intimate conversations you have with families. How do you talk to people about whether a vaccination in whichever type it is here is right for that individual? How do you get over that lack of trust or anxiety that some people may have?
The big thing is a lot of people are statistical, meaning if they see the statistics, if they see, what's the benefits versus the cons, a lot of them will see, they'll get on board. Not all of them, but a lot of them will. But then again, they go back to, okay, but we'll just do one today. We're not going to do the 4 or whatever it may be. So a lot of it is the educating. A big part of just what we do as providers and healthcare providers in general, no matter what stage you're at, education is most important. So, because a lot of people, the concern for autism from vaccines happen. It does happen, but, there has not been anything that can link. They've done so many studies. And again, there's other fears of brain bleeds and strokes and all these things. And it's like, okay, statistically, maybe you had somebody, that's the thing with the COVID shot. There has been people that are like, well, I don't want them to have it because my grandpa had a stroke after they got it. Right. But what other factors are there in that individual? So again, it just goes back to the educating for the patient scenario. What are the cons versus the pros? And you really have to decide for that individual patient what that is.
You talked about your particular part of the state. You have some faith reasons and upbringing that some folks may not get vaccinated. More broadly across the state, as you look at these overall student vaccination rates going down over the last several years, Does that give you particular concern in that these are young individuals whose bodies are growing and going through all kinds of stuff, and they're not getting that preventative care, what that could mean for the longer term?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a lot of why we vaccinate, we do the herd immunity. So, if we can get 9 out of the 10 people vaccinated for polio, let's say, the goal is everybody else is protected to protect that one. And so if we're not doing the herd immunity, some of these different bacteria, viruses are going to come about even though we've eradicated them. And so then that's going to, do a whole nother deal to our healthcare system. When because of COVID, we're still fighting some of that frail healthcare system.
This week, Iowa families got the chance to weigh in on the changes to the area education agency system. You'll remember back in January, Iowa's governor surprised people when she proposed some major changes to the AEAs. And some of this would take away some local control and give more oversight to the State Department of Public Education. She has since made changes because of all the criticism about this. But it seems like we really need to be paying attention to what's happening in the Iowa Republican-led House and the Republican-led Senate. They have two different plans, and some of it has addressed the pushback, the criticism they've received from people about what's happening with the AEAs. We're going to listen to three different people. One person works for an AEA, and she went to Perry High School to help there after the fatal shooting there. Another parent has a child using AEA and is for some changes. Another parent is against them. Here are those three.
In addition to January 4th, we've also had 11 other incidents. A kindergartner, another kindergartner, 2 fatalities, car accidents, a suicide, a double homicide, and a teacher who lost a baby. Districts are not prepared and do not have the resources to handle these things alone.
My son has had an IEP since preschool, and while I appreciate the services he receives, there are concerns I have based on my personal experiences. First and most importantly, I am concerned with my son's educational outcomes. He has been significantly behind in math for a couple of years, and I do not feel there has been a plan put in place to catch him up. IEP meetings are typically once a year, and updates on a child's progress are not given regularly, allowing for a lot of time to be lost. Teams should be more proactive with suggesting changes that could foster more learning success for the student.
My children who don't receive services from the AEA have received services through their teachers who went to the AEA for assistance because they didn't qualify for special ed, but they qualified for additional help. So I am asking you, as someone who has historically been proud to be an Iowan and is really suffering with that right now, please wait, reevaluate, get good ground research.
Time now for the final five other issues that we've been watching this week. Number one, where's Iowa's governor? Kim Reynolds' office has not put out a public schedule for 2 straight weeks. Usually that happens. Now, we've already seen the governor has pulled back the amount of public appearances she does. She rarely does news conferences, which is something that historically Iowa governors have done. Number two, we've learned from private conversations with some Iowa Republicans that they weren't too thrilled that the governor had the Department of Public Education post the jobs that would be needed for these oversight roles if the AEAs get some of these big picture changes where the state takes over some of the oversight. Some legislators told me privately that they were not too happy with the fact that she already did this, even though the legislature hasn't passed and agreed on anything yet. Number three, speaking of the legislature, Gary Moore, a state house representative from Davenport, has sponsored a bill that would put more requirements in the state's open meeting laws. Now, this is something that it's an issue that a lot of people don't really follow. Obviously, reporters do because we want to know what's going on so we can keep track of public officials. But Moore is upset with what's happened in Davenport. And if you remember, last May, they had that old building that collapsed 3 people ended up dying. There have been so many complaints about were city officials inspecting that building like they're supposed to, but then also whether Davenport City Council members had discussions in private about things like settlements for some of the workers impacted, for example. And the criticism is that these meetings should have happened in public. Gary Moore's bill put some more teeth into the requirements of open meetings, and it passed in the House 92-2. So now we will see how the state Senate handles this issue. Number 3, nothing to do with politics, but it has to do with the weather. There was optimism in January. We got all that snow, which was annoying, obviously, but it gave us some precipitation. However, February has been dry, and we really need the precipitation. The last 3 years have been dry in our state, starting to dry up water supplies. Look what's happened in Clark County, just as one example. So that's something to keep an eye on, but we could really use some rain in the weeks ahead. And we close with number 5. There's a new book that is out. Mark Daly is the author. Mark Daly spent a good bit of time in Iowa back in the last decade or so. He worked for the state Democratic Party. He also worked for former Congressman Leonard Boswell and for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign back in 2008. Now, he's since moved to LA. He's married. He and his husband tried to adopt siblings through the foster care system. And that is a lot of what this book is about, going through the ups and downs, and exposes a lot of challenges in the system. In the end, Mark and his husband, Jason, ended up adopting 3 other siblings as those original 2 struggled back and forth with their biological parents. This really gets into a lot of things, and Mark has now found himself almost kind of thrust in a role talking nationally about what we need to do to improve the foster care system, get more people involved, and find ways to better protect these children, to figure out if whether they really should be reunified. What can we do as a community to help in situations like this? Or do we need to find more foster families to get involved? Big picture, Mark would say we need to do all of these things, both on state level and on the national level. Thanks for joining us this week. We'll talk to you next week.